1 month on, America pauses to remember its loss. Cockpit video of the latest strikes on Afghanistan. Defense chief warns action could last into next summer. And pressure mounts on Transport Secretary Stephen Byers.
From ITN, the ITV News with Trevor McDonald.
Good evening and welcome to this ITV News special. A month to the day since the attacks on America, President George W. Bush, his top officials and senior generals joined hundreds of Pentagon workers today to remember and to honor those who died. They listened to stirring military music and patriotic hymns, and they watched their president fighting back tears as he said, out of sorrow had come great resolve. In New York, they remembered too, at precisely the moment the World Trade Center was first hit. James Smith reports.
The last post sounds at the Pentagon 1 month to the day since this building and this country were shattered by history's most evil, most deadly terrorist attacks. For the servicemen and their families, the day was bittersweet. It is 1 month since the people they loved, the people they worked with, were so brutally killed, their names scrolling across a giant screen. And yet they're happy in the knowledge that this week other colleagues, thousands of miles away, have begun America's counterattack. The President held aloft the stars and stripes as so many of his countrymen do every day now, and at times looked close to tears. He spoke of the strength his country has found through tragedy.
September 11th, great sorrow came to our country. And from that sorrow has come great resolve. Today we are a nation awakened to the evil of terrorism and determined to destroy it. The hijackers were instruments of evil who died in vain.
In vain, he said, because of the fate that will now befall their protectors in Afghanistan.
We gave that regime a choice. Turn over the terrorists or face your ruin. They chose unwisely.
The hijackers achieved anything on September the 11th, it was the near total unity of this country behind its president and its military. In New York City, at Ground Zero, the sound of the bagpipes brought work to a stop, the city's mayor leading them in a minute's silence at the very moment, 1 month ago, the first plane struck.
Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like a year ago or more. The fire is still burning, but from it has emerged a stronger spirit, a more unified country, a more unified city, and a more unified world in the goal of making certain that something like this never happens again.
In 1 month, they have made great progress, but there remains a mountain of rubble where the Twin Towers once stood, and 4,800 people still missing beneath it. It has been a curious day of solemn memorial services, interspersed with regular updates on the air campaign in Afghanistan. In their current mood, Americans wouldn't have it any other way. James Bates, ITN, Washington.
And American planes are dropping bombs in Afghanistan again tonight after a day of almost unchallenged daylight attacks on Kabul. On the ground, the anti-Taliban rebels of the Northern Alliance have told ITV News they want the Americans to bomb different targets. They want help in their battles around strategic positions like Bagram Airfield, from where our correspondent Julian Mannion reports.
Kabul has been bombarded many times in the last 20 years, but never quite like this. American firepower has devastated selected targets, with the airport taking repeated massive hits. The Taliban's tiny air force has been put out of action, and military headquarters and government buildings destroyed. But commanders of the opposition Northern Alliance, who've been massing their troops 20 miles north of Kabul in the hope of marching on the capital, are disappointed. General Babajan commands a vital section of the front at the ruined Bagram Air Base, where his men and the Taliban confront each other a few hundred yards apart. On a tour of alliance positions, he told me that US and British airstrikes are hitting the wrong targets.
The Taliban haven't really suffered from these attacks. The Americans have hit airfields and air defense systems, but they haven't inflicted huge losses on the Taliban.
General Babajan took me onto the deserted runway of the Bagram Air Base and pointed out the Taliban positions that he believes should be bombed to open the road to Kabul.
The thousands of Taliban soldiers dug in at the other end of the Bagram runway in that village behind me over there are one of the most tempting military targets currently available. But it seems that for political reasons the United States and Britain will not bomb them immediately. And the likely result of that is that the operation against Osama bin Laden and the Taliban will take longer than originally hoped.
The political reason that now appears to compel delay is that London and Washington do not want the Northern Alliance to take power in Kabul on their own. Instead, they want a broader-based government to replace the Taliban. And until it's formed, it's possible that Taliban troops blocking the road to Kabul will not be bombed. General Babajan may well have to wait before he marches on the Afghan capital. Julian Mannion, ITN, at Bagram, near Kabul.
Britain's top military officer, Admiral Sir Michael Boyce, said today the campaign against Osama bin Laden's terrorist network could last through the winter and into next summer at the very least. In the meantime, American experts have been analysing how their air campaign has been progressing so far. Here's our defence correspondent, Kevin Dunn.
Tonight, the Pentagon released the first video evidence of one of its strikes, an attack it said was on a surface-to-air missile site. They also released photographs of a Taliban military airfield before a raid and after it was hit by multiple bombs. The Pentagon also confirmed they were now targeting Taliban troops.
Most of our targeting has been to their air defense, command control, airfields, and certainly Taliban troops and their facilities will also be targets.
American aircraft are now attacking targets in Afghanistan around the clock. Today, the airport in Kabul and Taliban military units near the capital were struck. But it was emphasized at the Ministry of Defense that if necessary, this campaign will be a long haul.
It could be a very short haul if the Al-Qaeda is detached from the Taliban, they give up Osama bin Laden, and we have a commitment within that country not to support terrorism. But we must expect at least to go through the winter and into next summer at the very least.
This was the night sky over Kabul tonight, as American bombs and missiles again struck the capital. Kevin Dunn, ITN.
Those then are the images of the latest attacks on Afghanistan, but where does the campaign go from here? Let's go now to Robert Moore in our briefing studio.
Trevor, as we enter a fifth night of airstrikes on Afghanistan, the focus of this military campaign may be about to shift significantly. So far, targets with the use of Pakistan's valuable airspace have included Taliban military installations, as well as remote training camps across Afghanistan. The Pentagon is now reporting key facilities destroyed around Kabul and other major towns. The question now is how to track down those held responsible for the attacks on America. For example, in Host, there is a known network of